Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist Integrity doing a Little D deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is basically Little D's Great Adventure because we're playing an adventure package in this deck. This deck is super awesome to be able to play because we're playing the most powerful monster ever created in Yu-Gi-Oh! In it, Little D. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like in your name description every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this, into Little D's Great Adventure. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the most powerful card ever created, 3 copies of Little D. Basically, when you summon this card to your side of the field, you instantly win the game because it's the most powerful card in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's just such an awesome card to be able to build a deck around. We then play 3 copies of the most useless card in the entire deck, and that's going to be 3 copies of Water Enchantress of the Temple. This card basically just gets us to our copies of our Rite of Arameser. We then play a single copy of Wandering Griffin Rider because sometimes Little D's feet get tired and he needs to take a ride instead of, carrying the entire deck. So we're playing a single copy of Wandering Griffin Rider. This card is also a negate, which is kind of nice, and it's searchable off our copy of Fateful Adventure. We then play a single copy of Morphing Jar because he's smiling. This card is really nice. It cheers me up. It's a really good card in this deck as well because it does fill up our hand with a bunch of equip spells so we can make Little D into Massive D, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Cyberstein. Cyberstein is one of the most broken cards ever created, and just in case you get hungry mid-duel, you can use it to pay 5,000 life points to summon out Sandwich, which is really nice to have a sandwich mid-duel. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Upstart Goblin. This is a 41 card deck. So if you really think about it, by playing Upstart Goblin in the deck, it does bring the deck technically back down to 40, which is big brain plays. So you really want to play Upstart in this deck as a one of, because it does bring the consistency of the deck just right. We then play a single copy of One Day of Peace because sometimes Little D does need a little bit of peace, and so we do play the 1 copy of One Day of Peace. This card is great because it does let both players draw, and it prevents damage for that turn, which is really nice. We then play 2 copies of Pot of Prosperity because this card just helps us dig into the deck to get the exact cards that we need for our copies of Little D. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is great in this deck just to help us draw additional cards so we can get more equip spells for Little D so we can OTK the opponent. We then play 3 copies of Unexpected Die because what's better than 1 copy of Little D on the field? 2, because you can normal summon out 1 to your side of the field, but before you do that, activate Unexpected Die, and then special summon out 1 from the deck, which is really insane to just get 2 of them on your side of the field to OTK your opponent with. We then play 3 copies of Rite of Arameser. Rite of Arameser is a definite 3 of in this deck, because this card just helps you get an adventure token on your side of the field and gets Fateful Adventure as well, which is super nice, so you can back up your copy of Little D. Not that he needs it. We then play a single copy of Fateful Adventure. Fateful Adventure is great because it helps us get to our copy of our Draco back and also helps us get to our copy of our other cards that we need, like our Wandering Griffin Rider. We then play a single copy of Draco back because it's just a funny image to see Little D actually riding this card, which is just really funny. I love that image in my head. But this card is just really awesome because you can actually equip it to Little D, which is really nice because it is a non-effect monster, which is really neat. We then play 2 copies of the Starbow. Starbow is really good just in case you need to attack your opponent directly just to end the game. And you can equip this to Little D after he gets all of the other equip spells equipped to him, which is really insane because you can get Little D over 8,000 attack points in this deck, which is really easy to do. And this card decreases the attack of a monster equipped with this card by 1,000 points. And a monster equipped with this card can attack your opponent's life points directly, which is just hilarious to bypass all your opponent's monsters and attack them directly. We then play 3 copies of Power of the Guardians because sometimes Little D needs a little bit of protection. This card is really good at that, at actually giving Little D that protection, because if an attack is declared involving the equipped monster, you place a spell counter on this card, and the equipped monster gains 500 attack and defense points for each spell counter on this card. And if the equipped monster would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can remove a spell counter from this card instead, which is really good to give Little D that protection. We then play 3 copies of Mage Power because this card makes makes Little D into Big D, and this card is really good in the deck because the equipped monster gains 500 attack defense for each spell or trap that you control, which is really, really good in this deck because you can make Little D massive with this card, especially if you equip multiple copies of this card to Little D. We then play 3 copies of United We Stand. United We Stand is really good in this deck because it makes Big D into Massive D. And this card is also really good because when you equip this copy or copies of United We Stand to Little D, and you have copies of, say, your Adventure token on your side of the field, Wandering Griffin Rider, and Little D, he's going to go by 2,400 attack points and boost him all the way up to like 35, which is really insane just off of this card and your Adventure package. We then play 3 copies of Moon Mirror Shield to round out the spells. Moon Mirror Shield is a definite 3 of the deck because it makes Little D unmatched, which he already is unmatched, but this card is really good in the deck because it makes it so when Little D battles an opponent's monster, he's always going to have 100 more attack points than that opponent's monster, which is insanely good about this card, and it's just a great card to play in the deck overall. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 3 traps, and that's going to be 3 copies of Skill Drain. This deck just drains the skill, and it's just really, really good in this particular deck as well, because you don't need any skill with this deck. You just basically summon Little D to your side of the field, and you win. Because once you summon out to your side of the field, your opponent's usually going to scoop anyways, which is really cool. And this card is insanely good in the deck because activating this card just takes 1,000 life points. It doesn't really matter. And also has the ability to negate the effects of all face-up monsters that are face-up on the field. But their effects can still activate. Doesn't matter, Little D doesn't have an effect because if you did give him an effect, he would be totally broken and be at 0 on the list. But this card is really good in the deck as a 3 of to basically be able to stop your opponent's monster effects because Little D doesn't have an effect and doesn't need one. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start off with 3 copies of Sandwich. You're playing 3 copies of Sandwich because it's one of the coolest fusion monsters ever created in the game. Plus, mid-game, you might get hungry, so you need 3 copies of Sandwich. It's the best card in the entire game to summon off of Cyberstein's effect by paying 5,000 life points. You know, summoning out a vanilla 2,100 attack point monster is just next brain Yu-Gi-Oh! So you got to play 3 copies of this card in the deck. It's super good and has some of the easiest summoning requirements in the game. You just use a copy of Sangan or Witch of the Black Forest to be able to summon this card out, but you don't ever summon it that way. You're going to pay 5,000 life points off of Cyberstein to summon out this card every time, which is really good for the deck because every so often Little D, while you're playing the game, will get hungry, so you throw him a sandwich. We then play 3 copies of The Last Warrior from Another Planet. The Last Warrior from Another Planet is an insanely powerful card that we can summon from our extra deck off the effect of Cyberstein. And this card is really good because if this card is special summon, you destroy all the monsters that you control and neither player can summon monsters, which is a great effect to be able to use with your copies of Little D and Power of the Guardian because you can just remove a counter from your copy of Power of the Guardian and Little D lives through The Last Warrior from Another Planet and you win the game. We then play 3 copies of Necturia Exterio. Exterio is really good as a 3 of the deck because this card is basically a walking negate infinitely, which is just really cool. This card is super good in the deck, and you play this card as a card to be able to summon off your copy of Cyberstein, but it's not as good as Sandwich. We then play 3 copies of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, the most balanced card ever created in Yu-Gi-Oh! This card is top tier balanced card design, having 4 very balanced effects and very good effects in the game. It can't be destroyed by card effects and neither player can target it with card effects, and since we can't target it, it makes it fair. So this card is really good, and during your main phase you can destroy 1 monster that your opponent controls, but if you put extra vanilla monsters into this card, it can actually use it twice, which is totally fair because we got to play bricks in our deck, right? But this card is also really good as well because we're never going to get that effect off for Cyberstein because we're not putting any vanillas into this card, but it is a walking negate once per turn by discarding a card from our hand, and then it boosts itself up by 1,000 attack points. But this card never gets better than Little D because Little D is the best card in the entire game. We're just playing this card basically as backup for him just in case he needs it, which he never will. We then play 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This card is really good as a 3 of in the deck. You're rarely ever summoning it, but if we're going to play Dark Magician and Red Eyes, we couldn't leave out Blue Eyes from the deck, even though it wishes we did. But this card is really good in the deck as well because it's a 4,500 attack point monster that we can summon off of Cyberstein, which is really awesome. We're basically just using the extra deck for Extravagance because Little D needs no backup at all. So we're just basically playing the best ones that we can, especially the copies of Sandwich. These can all be changed. You can't change Sandwich. Sandwich has to be played in the deck. It's one of our win conditions. It's so important for the deck that you play these 3 copies in the deck that these other 12 cards do not matter. You can change them out for anything that you want. You could play 3 copies of Rare Fish if you wanted to. For these right here, you could play 3 copies of Mystical Sand. If you wanted to play 3 copies of Hungry Burger in the main deck, you can. It doesn't matter as long as you can get to Little D. But that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. That's it for this one. This deck is super fun to be able to play. It's definitely tier 0. It's the best deck in the game. It's the best deck I've ever created because you're basically playing Little D, and it's Little D's Great Adventure because you're playing the Adventure package in this particular deck. So, anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely play this deck because it's super fun to be able to play. And make sure that if you're going to play this deck, play it at 40 and then play 1 copy of Upstart Goblin because it's a big brain play. So, anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell and there so you can become part of the notification squad. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.